Hello everyone, and welcome back to week 4 of our Road to Title series. That is right, I'm attempting the near impossible feat of pushing to the 0.01% title, pretty much pugging the entire way we've done it before, this is the second time we've tried, so. This week we are starting out at a Mythic Plus score of 2805 and an item level of 662. So stick around and see what this week has in store for us. So put the key in, pull timer, and let's go. Alright, so you guys already know we're going to start off by opening that vault. And to be honest, we have a pretty good vault this week. We managed to get a few bosses down in Heroic, and that is going to allow us to pick up the Mr. Pick Me Up trinket, which is a super good S tier trinket right now. It does a ton of healing, gives us a lot of intellect, so we are going to go with that trinket this week. And to start off this week, the first key that we are jumping into is going to be a plus 12 Operation Mechagon. And I would say this is probably one of the easier keys. I don't mind doing Mechagon too much. I think the hardest part about Mechagon is the dog pull, where they jump all over the place and put all those dots on top of you. It's probably the hardest pull. But we're not there yet. So starting off with this first pull, I've seen this done two ways. You split the room in half and you do it twice, two different pulls, or you do this and you just do one big one. Now doing the one big pull is totally doable. It's viable. You can do this. However, if you're pugging, it's probably easier to split this room in half. You just have to get all the stops and the kicks on point, and if you don't do that, well, then you just pretty much wipe your entire team. So I will say, if you are doing lower keys, just split the room in half and do two different pulls at least. Don't try and pull the entire room. In the higher keys, you're trying to make as much time as possible, so hopefully you can, take down the entire pack without any issues, but at the end of the day here, we are going to end up losing 2 people. And then me personally, I'm just a straight up idiot, and I stood directly in this circle, and I ended up dying. So we didn't die from the explosion, we just died from failing to move out of the orange circle on the ground. That is skill issue, 100%. The whole team doesn't wipe though. 3 deaths, 45 seconds down. The packs do go down, and we're gonna head straight into the first boss here. Jumping ahead to the pull after the first boss, nothing really happened on first boss other than the paladin ended up dying. He just stood in the big circle and died, so we did have 1 death on first boss. But moving into this pull, this can be one of the harder pulls just because you have the heal absorb going out at the same time you have the AoE going out. So we pop our Radiance, pop our Void Form, all that good stuff, and we're just pumping in damage as we're keeping the group up for that big healing. So not too bad, the ads go down pretty quick. One of the things I hate the most though is when that drill doesn't die fast enough and then tank goes into the next pull with the drill still up. And then we get that second AoE burst damage. And I'm not sure what happened here. As the tank goes to pull the next pack, he pops meta and he pops his other DR, but still just falls over and dies. So I think really what happened is the goop got off, the heal absorb got off right as he was pulling. And as he's pulling, he had no healing, and he died from that. I'm assuming that's what happened. So we are going to lose a few people here, but we managed to recover the pull. Tank runs back in just fine, and we are able to clean it up and kill the pack. So that's 1 boss down and already 7 deaths, which is not good. I will say too though, not doing the affix because we're in a plus 12 is awesome. Like, I didn't realize, I enjoy the affix because it gives you those awesome buffs when you do it, but just not having to worry about it is way better than any buff you could give me. I enjoy not having to do any affixes. It's fantastic. So moving to the dog pull, usually tank does you know, 2 of these packs, but he's doing all 3. And at this point, I see him pull everything, and I'm thinking in my head, how in the hell am I going to do this? What cooldowns do I have? What defenses do I have? How am I going to keep everybody alive here? So I Dispel the first one. I'm going to wait till 3 goes out, and then I'm going to Mass Dispel and get those off of everybody. Dispel comes back up, and I could just Dispel myself, but I have Atonements out on everybody, so in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to do some damage and just heal through this dot. I do Dispel myself. The Shaman gets dispelled or it falls off, so that's good. Another one jumps onto the Shaman and myself, and we got another one. So once again, I think the Shaman dispels himself, I dispel myself, and I'm kind of panicking because with everything pretty much dead, I just have to flash heal to keep people alive. But somehow, miraculously, we end up not losing a single person during that pull. And I'm going to be self-critical right now, but this helps us get better, you know? But I am so bad at using pain suppression. I just save pain suppression for the perfect moment, and that perfect moment is, it doesn't exist. The perfect moment doesn't exist, and I need to be using it more, and I'm not. There was plenty of times where I could have used a pain suppression on someone that had that dot, and it would have been huge benefit, but I don't. I hold it, and a lot of the times in these dungeons, I don't even hit pain suppression once, and I have been called out on it. I have been yelled at by people in multiple dungeons. And so, you know, we just got to get better, and we got to make sure that we're rotating through our cooldowns a lot better than what I am currently doing. And moving into the Cujo fight here, this fight is pretty easy. You know exactly when all the damage is going to come out, and so it's very easy to plan your cooldowns and just making sure that you have a CD to use as soon as you dispel the tank. The tank is a little low here. I struggle getting him up before the dispel, so I am going to actually use pain suppression before I dispel him, which works perfectly. And the rest of this fight goes super smooth with no other problems. And the rest of the key just goes absolute flawlessly. We have no other problems, no other deaths, a lot of good damage, packs die quickly, bosses die quickly, and so we may have started off pretty rough in this dungeon with those early deaths, but we managed to make up the time just fine, and we're gonna end up timing our very first plus 12 dungeon of the season, and that's gonna give us 28 points, bringing us up to a total of 28-32. The next dungeon, we got into a plus 12 Cinder Brew. If you can get through the first boss, I swear the rest of this dungeon is so easy, especially this boss. This boss is probably one of the easiest bosses I've ever done. I've never wiped on this boss before because it's so easy, and you know, there's a first time for everything. So we did have some rough patches on the way here. We did have a couple onesie, twosies deaths, different pulls. Not really, we didn't have a group wipe. Again, just one person dying here and there. So, I mean, 9 people dying here and there. Besides the point though, things were going pretty decent. Still very timeable with our current situation. And like, this doesn't happen to me very often in this fight. In fact, this is like one of the few times that it really does. But the barrels go down and spawn the ads, and then the ads immediately from my healing aggro, I pick them up and they just one-shot me. But I think one of the biggest underlining issues with this fight is that people don't get on the B and break the barrels fast enough. And if they would have used one of the Bs and broken those barrels behind us, they would have never spawned the ads. You would have never had an ad issue. And this is a theme I constantly see specifically on this fight. It's just people aren't fast enough at breaking the barrels. But I do accept the B-res. In fact, though, that's not going to do anything for us, and it's going to be a total group wipe, and we are going to call the key here. So now we're jumping into a plus 12 Priory, and I do have to say, guys, being a Discipline Priest, I am getting invited to groups extremely way faster than I ever have on my Holy Paladin. So I know, you know, it's kind of annoying flavor of the month kind of players, but there's a reason why people do it. And just going off on a slight side tangent here, I just absolutely hate tier lists. I think people who make tier lists are just obnoxious, and they probably shouldn't exist. Figure it out yourself. Pick players that are good, and it doesn't matter what class they play. Except hunters. We just don't play with those. Not too bad on the first pull though. I have seen worse. I will say the bleeds in Priory are probably one of the most obnoxious things in this entire dungeon. As a Void Weaver, you do sometimes lack some of that single target push through. The AoE is great, When you have everyone taking damage, you have your CDs up, the AoE healing is fantastic. But when it's just that one person that's ticking down really hard, or two people in that case, it's a little rough. And I know some of you are watching this and you're thinking, holy shit, this guy is so bad. Because you can clearly see what CDs I have up when people are dropping, and I didn't use them. And this is advice for me, but just push your buttons. Like, if everybody dies, but you had pushed all your buttons, all your big healing spells, all your defensives, you know, it happens. Sometimes they're rough. But when people are dying and you still have multiple CDs that you could be using right now, you're kind of throwing. If you're the healer, you're throwing. And I kind of threw that pull. You always got to evaluate yourself, and that's what we're doing. Also, because it's only week 4 of the new patch, you will see routes drastically change throughout, and it is not super common today to be pulling those packs we're pulling, specifically because of all the bleeds that do go out on that first pull. So pulling those two, I think it's the knights, it's the ones that ride the lynxes, they're the ones that throw out those bleeds, and yeah, you usually don't pull 2 of them, you usually just have 1. So pulling both of them is a little difficult to heal through. So jumping a little ahead here, we almost have a full group wipe. We're currently in between Void Weaver right now, so we're healing with only using Smite, and our tank dies. He was good and healthy, and then just in a matter of a couple seconds, he just completely dropped down. And if anyone is going to die, it's always going to be when you're in between your Void Fiend, because you're not Void Blasting, you don't have that big damage going out, and you're just using Smite and Penance to keep people up with a little bit of Radiance here and there. And it's just, sometimes it's not enough. Now when Void Fiend is out though, you do kind of feel unstoppable. But luckily we had a quick battle res, and then the Elemental Shaman went ahead and used an Ankh there, and we were able to recover pretty quickly. However though, literally the next pack that we pull, and if you see I do Pain Suppression the tank, the healing is going out, we got our Void Fiend out, we're doing damage, we're healing, and unfortunately the tank just can't take all the damage, and he ends up dropping again, and this time it is going to be a wipe. And unfortunately that is going to be the key. The tank did have a dispel on him, so maybe I should have dispelled faster. I could have popped Dome, but other than that there's not too much I could have done there. But Priory is probably one of the harder dungeons. Actually, sorry, Priory is the hardest dungeon. We struggle on this one more than any other dungeon this season. Alright, so next up we're moving into a plus 12 Cinder Brew. We actually did end up running a few dungeons before this one, but they were bricked pretty early on, so we're not going to show those. But first pull of Cinder Brew is everyone's favorite pull, except the healer, because there's a lot going on. So Lust goes down, and we're popping our Void Wraith into Radiance, into Mind Blast, and we're just going to be able to Void Blast to keep the entire group alive through all this damage. And I usually don't dispel during the Void Blast because I can keep them alive. However, that individual who just died stood in a swirly, and then the channel was just channeling on him, and he died. So it wasn't really my fault. So one thing that I have started doing here is I've started setting focus to enemies. Reason being is I tab target a lot. When you tab target, you know, it cycles through all the ads. It usually picks a target that is furthest away, not in combat to you, and then you end up pulling them by accident. But we're setting focus because when I click on one of my healing panels, it targets that person. So when I'm using Mind Blast and it puts Schism on one of the targets, and then I heal somebody and I change my target, and then I try and tab target, it's not going to tab target back onto the person that has Schism on it. And Schism does more damage when you attack that specific target. So we have a focus target now. That way I can focus target, I can Shadow Word Pain, get the Mind Blast on it so it has Schism, and then I also know I can always hit that target with Penance, which will then continue to spread the Shadow Word Pains. So it has been a huge help in spreading my Shadow Word Pains, and by utilizing and maximizing the amount that Schism is up for. It's only up for like 8 seconds. But you know, you just want to get the most out of it. And then we end up losing the mage twice as well, but you know, 3 deaths, not terrible. Could be better. Now going into the first boss, things were going all right, and then the mage here, during the intermission phase, I think he DCs right there. And because he DC'd, his character is actually in the fire, so he's just burning alive and dying. So the first intermission with 1 person down and 4 DPS, that's just super rough. I don't know if we have a battle res right now or not. I don't remember using one, or it's the team using one, but it just looks like we're gonna have to 4-man this. So thankfully, even with 1 person down pretty much the entire fight, we are able to 4-man the first boss with still a decent amount of time left on the clock. So it's still totally doable to be able to time this key. Whether the mage disconnected or not, he is back, he releases, and we're good to go. Now moving on to the hallway pole, everything is going fine, but then everyone starts running in place, and I realize it's my turn, and I disconnect. And I think it's 100% the Blizzard servers. I think this is during one of those DDoS attacks that happened that were going on, so we end up disconnecting. But we eventually managed to get back in after like 30 some odd seconds. We already have a res waiting for us, and we're on the move again. So far, guys, this is not an ideal situation. We're gonna have to make up a lot of time. But even with all of what happened, we have 12 deaths, which is a total of 3 minutes off the clock. We are still gonna be able to time this key with seconds left to spare. And honestly, that key was scuffed. Like, there's so much that went wrong, so many problems that we had. I'm surprised we even timed it. But a win is a win, so we will take those 20 points, bringing us up to a total score of 28-52. But yeah, that was rough. That was rough. And now we're in a plus 12 mother load, and we're jumping straight to the last boss. Already this dungeon had been super smooth. We are on last boss with 8 minutes. We did have a couple hiccups along the way, and then just a couple side deaths, but for the most part, it's been really smooth, really good damage, really good players. The last boss here, one of the tricks that you will see is a lot of the time you will pull the boss into this little corner right here, and you'll keep him on this vent. This bottom left-hand vent in the top right-hand corner of the vent is a safe spot from all of those missiles. You can stand there the whole time, and a missile will never land on that spot, even if you're completely surrounded by them. And this works for phase 1 because the machine gun and the missiles don't ever line up at the same time. So for this first phase, you always just want to keep the boss here. Now, when you move into phase 2 afterwards, you will have bombs on top of the Gatling gun. And sometimes it's not always safe to pull the boss here because you might end up running into one of the bombs while it's spinning around doing his Gatling gun. So in my opinion, it is best practice to just move the boss into the safe corners of the room for phase 2. But during that phase 1, I think pulling boss right there on that corner is probably the best way to handle that. So boss goes down just fine. We timed the key. We realized, wait a second, we're only at 99%. So we have to go back and kill a couple of these bombs to get a little bit of the percentage. But easy day, we kill an ad, we time the key, giving us 32 points, bringing us up to a score of 28-84. We have just been flying through all these 12s today. It's been feeling really good. And that is actually going to be our final key for the week, ending at a total score of 28-84. So as always, thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thanks for watching. Please give the video a like and subscribe, and we will continue on this journey and see if we can hit the 0.01% Mythic Plus title.